The morning sun shone through the massive windows of the Galactic Military Academy on Nexus Prime. The building stretched high into the sky, its metal walls gleaming like silver. Inside the halls, hundreds of alien cadets moved between classes. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled on 6. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. Hyon walked down the main corridor with his head held high. His black hair was cut short in military style, and his brown eyes looked straight ahead. Other cadets moved aside as he passed, but not out of respect. They moved because they did not want to touch him. To them, he was dirty. He was human. The humans had joined the Galactic Federation only 5 years ago. Most aliens still thought of them as a new species that got lucky. Earth was far from the center of the galaxy, and humans had only just learned to travel between stars. Many aliens believed humans were weak and slow. They thought humans were only good for simple jobs, like cleaning or carrying things. Hyon reached his combat training class and stepped inside. The room was huge, with soft mats covering the floor. Weapons hung on the walls, swords, staffs, and energy weapons from dozens of different worlds. The ceiling was high enough for the tallest aliens to move freely. About 30 cadets were already in the room. Most of them were much bigger than Hyon. There was Korath, a Thuvian who stood almost 8 feet tall. His forearms were thick with muscle, and his skin looked like gray stone. Next to him stood Zelix, a Chidoran whose insect-like body clicked when he moved. His 6 legs made him very fast, and his compound eyes could see in all directions, near. The back wall was Braun, a Kavari whose body was made of living crystal. Light moved through his transparent skin in patterns. When he hit something, his crystal body could become as hard as diamond. These 3 always stayed together, and they always caused trouble for the human cadets. Hyon saw his 2 human friends near the corner. Jin was tall and thin, with kind eyes that always seemed worried. Hannah was shorter but stronger, with quick hands that were good with machines. Like Hyon, they tried to stay quiet and not cause problems. The Academy had made it clear that humans were on trial. If they caused trouble, all humans might be sent home. The door opened with a loud bang, and Instructor Vex walked in. He was a Drachnari, one of the lizard people from the desert worlds. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes seemed to see everything. He was 9 feet tall and moved like a giant snake. Most cadets were afraid of him, and they had good reason to be. Line up, Vex shouted in his deep voice. His forked tongue flicked out as he spoke. Today you will practice one-on-one combat. Real fighting, not the soft training you did yesterday. The cadets quickly formed a line. Hyon stood between a blue-skinned Zephyrion and a furry Ursoid who smelled like wet dog. He could feel the other aliens looking at him. Some made quiet jokes about humans being too weak for real fighting. Vex walked down the line, his claws clicking. On the floor, I will choose partners for sparring matches. You will fight until one surrenders or cannot continue. His yellow eyes stopped on Hyon. Some of you think you are warriors. Today we will see who is right. The instructor began calling out names and pairing cadets together. Most matches seemed fair. Aliens of similar size and strength were put together. But when Vex reached Hyon, he smiled in a way that showed all his sharp teeth. Human Hyon, he said slowly. You will fight Korath. A wave of whispers went through the room. Korath was one of the strongest cadets in the class. His people, the Thuvians, were known across the galaxy as great warriors. They had thick bones that were hard to break, and their skin was like natural armor. Korath had never lost a fight in the academy. Korath stepped forward and flexed his 4 arms. Each arm was as thick as Hyon's leg. This will be over fast, he said in his rumbling voice. The other aliens laughed. Are you sure about this match? Jin whispered to Hannah. Korath could really hurt him. Hyon can take care of himself, Hannah replied, but her voice sounded worried too. Hyon walked to the center of the mat. He looked small next to Korath, like a child standing next to an adult. The Thuvian was not just taller and stronger, he also had experience. His people had been fighting wars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Begin, Vex shouted, but instead of starting the fight, Korath just stood there. He crossed his arms and looked down at Hyan like he was looking at an insect. I am being kind to you, human. Surrender now, and I will not hurt you too much. Fight me properly, Hyan said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made a few aliens step back. Korath laughed. You want to get hurt? Fine. He uncrossed his arms and took a fighting position. His 4 hands made fists, and his gray skin began to change color, becoming harder and darker. This was the Thuvian battle state. Their skin became like stone armor dot around the room. Other matches had started. But most cadets were watching Hyan and Korath instead of fighting. They wanted to see the human get beaten. Some had even started betting on how long Hyan would last. Look at him, Zelix clicked to Braun. He is not even afraid. Humans are too stupid to know when they are in danger. This will teach all the humans their place, Braun replied, his crystal body glowing brighter with excitement, but Jin and Hannah knew something the aliens did not. They had seen Hyan fight before, back on Earth during their military training. They knew he was not just another weak human. Hyan had grown up in the mountains of Korea, where he learned old fighting styles from his grandfather. He had also trained with Earth's special forces before coming to the academy. The aliens did not know that humans were different from other species in important ways. Most aliens had evolved to be good at one thing. The Thuvians were strong. The Chitaurans were fast, the Kavari were tough. But humans had evolved to be good at many things. They could adapt and change their fighting style based on their enemy. Hyan stood still and watched Korath carefully. He was learning. He saw how the Thuvian moved, how he balanced his weight, where his weak spots might be. This was something humans did naturally. They studied their enemies and found ways to win. The room grew quiet, except for the sounds of other fights happening around them. Instructor Vex watched with interest. He had seen many fights, but something about this one felt different. The human was too calm, too ready. Korath finally lost patience. Enough waiting, he roared. Time to finish this. He charged forward with all 4 arms reaching for Hyan. His stone-hard fists could break bones easily. Any normal cadet would have tried to run or block the attack. But Hyan was not normal, and he was not like other cadets. The aliens were about to learn something important about humans. They were about to discover why humans had survived on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. They were about to see what happened when you pushed a human too far. The fight was about to begin. For real. The Academy's training room fell silent as all eyes turned to the center mat. Korath stood ready to fight, but something made him pause. He wanted to humiliate the human first, to show everyone that humans did not belong here. Wait, Korath sighed, holding up one of his 4 hands. Before we fight, let me show you something about your place here, human. Hyan stood quietly, his dark eyes watching every movement. He had learned long ago that bullies liked to talk before they acted. His grandfather had taught him to be patient, to watch, and to wait for the right moment. Korath walked in a slow circle around Hyan. His heavy feet made loud sounds on the mat. Do you know what we call humans in our language? He asked loudly, making sure everyone could hear. We call you the weak ones who got lucky. Some of the alien cadets laughed. Zelix made his clicking sound that meant he found something funny. Braun's crystal body glowed brighter, showing his excitement. They all wanted to see the human put in his place. Your people found one small technology that let them travel to other stars, Korath continued. But that does not make you warriors. That does not make you strong. You are still the same weak animals from your little planet. Hyan said nothing. He had heard these words many times before. Every day at the academy, someone reminded the humans that they were new, that they were different, that they did not belong. The alien cadets acted like humans had stolen something that was not theirs. My people have been fighting wars for 10,000 years, Korath said, his voice getting louder. We have conquered 12 star systems. We are known across the galaxy as true warriors, and you think you can stand against me? Instructor Vex watched from the side of the room. His reptile eyes showed no emotion, but he was interested in what would happen. In his mind, this was a good lesson for the humans. They needed to learn their place in the galactic order. Jin and Hana stood with the other watching cadets. They wanted to help their friend, but they knew they could not. Any interference would mean all three humans would be thrown out of the academy. They had to trust that Hyan could handle this himself. "Answer me when I speak to you," Korath suddenly shouted. He stepped closer to Hyan, using his height to try to scare him. "Are you too afraid to even talk?" "I am listening," Hyan replied calmly. His voice was quiet but clear. "Are you going to fight, or just talk?" This made Korath angry. Humans were supposed to be scared of him. They were supposed to beg for mercy. "You dare speak to me like that? I will teach you respect." Korath pretended to stumble as he stepped forward, but it was not an accident. His massive foot swung out and caught Hyan hard in the ribs. The kick was so powerful that it lifted Hyan off his feet and sent him sliding across the mat. Pain shot through Hyan's side like fire. He could taste blood in his mouth. The kick had been meant to look like an accident, but everyone knew it was on purpose. This was how the bullying always started, with something that could not be proved. "Oops," Korath said with fake concern. "I am so clumsy. Are you hurt, little human?" The alien cadets laughed louder now. They thought this was very funny. A few made jokes about how humans were so light that a small bump could knock them down. Even some of the more serious cadets smiled. Instructor Vex looked over for a moment, then looked away. "Accidents happen in training," he said to no one in particular. "Continue with the exercise?" Hyan slowly got to his feet. He wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. His ribs hurt badly and he could feel a bruise forming. But he had felt worse pain before. His training on Earth had been much harder than this. "Poor little human," Zelix clicked from the watching crowd. "Maybe you should go to the medical room? This is too dangerous for you." "Yes," Braun added, his crystal voice ringing like bells. "Go home to your soft planet where everything is safe." But Hyan did not move toward the door. Instead, he walked back to the center of the mat. He took his fighting position again, his feet shoulder-width apart, his hands ready. A small smile appeared on his face. This made Korath even more angry. "You think this is funny? You think being weak is something to smile about?" "I am thinking about my grandfather," Hyan said quietly. "He told me something once that I always remember." "What did the old fool tell you?" Korath demanded. "He said that when someone hits you for free, you should always give them a receipt." The alien cadets did not understand what this meant, but something in Hyan's voice made them feel uneasy. Jin and Hana understood, though. They knew that Hyan was not just angry now, he was focused. And a focused human was a dangerous human. Korath flexed his forearms again. His gray skin grew darker and harder as his natural armor activated. "Enough talk! Time to finish what I started." But as Korath prepared to attack, he made a mistake that many bullies make. He thought that because he had hurt Hyan once, it would be easy to do it again. He thought that because Hyan was smaller and looked weaker, the fight was already over. What Korath did not know was that humans had something most other species did not understand. When humans were hurt, when they were angry, when they were pushed too far, their bodies changed. Their hearts beat faster, their muscles became stronger, and their minds became sharper. The aliens had a word for this. They called it battle madness. But humans had a different word for it. They called it adrenaline. Hyan felt it starting now. His grandfather had taught him to control it, to use it, to make it work for him instead of against him. The pain in his ribs was still there, but it felt distant now. His vision became clearer, his hearing sharper. Around the room, the other sparring matches continued, but most cadets were still watching the human and the Thuvian. They expected to see Hyan get beaten badly. They expected him to surrender or get knocked out quickly. They were about to learn that humans were full of surprises. Korath charged forward again, all four fists ready to pummel the small human into the ground. He was confident, angry, and sure of his victory. He had made the mistake of thinking that the first hit was the same as winning the fight, but Hyan was no longer the same person who had been kicked a minute ago. The calm, quiet cadet was still there, but now there was something else too. Something that his grandfather had called the Wolf inside. It was time to show these aliens what humans were really capable of. Korath felt the power flowing through his forearms as he prepared for his attack. His stone-like skin had reached full hardness now, making him look like a living statue. Each of his hands was bigger than Hyun's head, and his knuckles could punch through metal plates. In his mind, this fight was already over. The Thuvian people were known throughout the galaxy as one of the greatest warrior races. Their home planet had gravity 3 times stronger than Earth, which made their bones incredibly dense and their muscles extremely powerful. From the time they could walk, young Thuvians learned to fight. They had no fear of pain because their thick skin protected them from most injuries. Korath had never lost a fight at the academy. He had defeated Kavari crystal warriors, fast Chitaran scouts, and even a draconian flame breather. Each victory had made him more confident, more sure that he was destined to be a great warrior. A small human would be easy. Look at him, Korath thought as he stared down at Hyun. He is so tiny. His bones must be like glass. One good hit and this will be finished. The other alien cadets were thinking the same thing. They had studied the files on human biology when the first humans arrived. At the academy, according to their teachers, humans were a weak species from a low-gravity world. Their bones were light, their muscles were small, and their skin was soft. They had no natural armor, no poison, no claws or fangs. They seemed like one of the weakest species in the galaxy. Zelix clicked his mandibles together in amusement. I almost feel sorry for the human, he told Braun. This is going to be embarrassing for him. At least it will be quick, Braun replied, his crystal body shimmering. Korath will probably knock him out with the first punch. Even Instructor Vex was not expecting much of a fight. In his experience, humans were decent at following orders and working with technology, but they were not natural fighters. Their bodies were too weak, their reflexes too slow. He had paired Hyun with Korath to teach the humans a lesson about their limitations, but there were things about humans that were not in the Academy's files. The aliens had studied human biology, but they had not studied human history. They did not know about the wars that humans had fought against each other for thousands of years. They did not know about the martial arts that had been developed over centuries. They did not know about the special forces training that some humans went through. Most importantly, they did not understand what Earth was really like. The Academy's files said that Earth was a Class M planet suitable for most forms of life. What the files did not mention was that Earth was also one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Almost everything on Earth was trying to kill everything else. The plants were poisonous, the animals were predators, and even the weather could be deadly. Humans had not evolved to be the strongest or the fastest. They had evolved to survive on a world where everything else was stronger and faster than they were. They had learned to be smart, to be tough, and to never give up. When a human was in danger, their body could do amazing things. Korath did not know that Hain had grown up in the mountains of Korea, where winter temperatures could freeze a person to death in minutes. He did not know that Hyun had been taught to fight by his grandfather, who had learned from masters of ancient fighting arts. He did not know that Hyun had completed the same training as Earth Special Forces soldiers. The Thuvian also did not understand human adrenaline. When aliens were in danger, they usually became either more aggressive or more defensive. But when humans were threatened, their entire body changed. Their heart pumped faster, sending more blood to their muscles. Their breathing became deeper, giving them more oxygen. Their senses became sharper, and their reaction time became faster. Most alien species had thick skin or natural armor to protect them from injury. Humans had something different. They had the ability to ignore pain when they needed to. A human with enough adrenaline could keep fighting even with broken bones or serious injuries. Korath knew none of this as he prepared to charge. All he saw was a small, weak creature that would be easy to defeat. He had fought dozens of opponents, and they had all tried the same things, blocking his attacks, trying to match his strength, or running away. He expected the human to do one of these things too. Time to end this, Korath growled. He lowered his head and prepared to rush forward like a battering ram. His plan was simple: grab the human with 2 arms, pin him down, and punch him with the other 2 arms until he surrendered. Around the room, other cadets stopped their own sparring matches to watch. Word had spread quickly that the human was about to get beaten badly. Even cadets from other species wanted to see this. Many of them had never seen a human fight before. Jin clenched his fists as he watched his friend prepare for the attack. He wanted to shout a warning, but he knew it would not help. Hana bit her lip nervously. Both of them had seen Heian fight during their training on Earth, but this was different. On Earth, he had fought other humans who were similar in size and strength. Now he was facing an alien who was much bigger and stronger, but they also knew something about their friend that the aliens did not. Heian was not just any human, he was a human who had been pushed too far. And humans who had been pushed too far were capable of things that surprised everyone, including themselves. Instructor. Vex raised his hand, ready to signal the start of the real fight. His yellow eyes watched both fighters carefully. He expected this to be over in seconds, but something about the human's posture made him curious. Most creatures about to face a much stronger opponent would show signs of fear, trembling, backing away, or looking for escape routes, but Heian stood perfectly still. His breathing was calm and controlled. His dark eyes never left Korath's face. He looked like he was waiting for something, but Vex could not figure out what it was. "Begin!" Vex shouted. Korath exploded forward with incredible speed for such a large creature. His 4 arms spread wide to grab Heian from all sides. His stone-hard fists were ready to deliver crushing blows. In his mind, he was already planning his victory. Speech. But as the massive Thuvian charged across the mat, Heian did something that no one expected. Something that went against everything the aliens thought they knew about fighting. Instead of backing away from the attack, instead of trying to block or dodge, Heian took a step forward. He moved toward the charging alien, not away from him. This was about to become a very different kind of fight. The moment Heian stepped forward instead of backward, something changed in the training room. The air seemed to grow thicker, and the sounds of other sparring matches faded into the background. Every eye was focused on the center mat where a small human was about to meet a charging alien warrior head-on. Korath was moving fast now, his 4 arms spread wide like the jaws of a trap. He weighed over 400 pounds, and all of that weight was rushing toward Heian at full speed. The impact should have been like being hit by a small vehicle. Most opponents would have been crushed instantly, but Heian had learned something during his years of training that the aliens did not understand. Sometimes the best defense was not to defend at all. Sometimes the smartest thing to do was exactly what your enemy did not expect. As Korath reached him, Heian dropped low and to the side. His left hand shot out and grabbed one of Korath's thick wrists. At the same time, his right hand grabbed the alien's belt. Then, using every lesson his grandfather had taught him about leverage and momentum, Heian pulled and twisted. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. Korath's own speed and weight became his enemy. Heian used the Thuvian's momentum against him, redirecting all that power and sending it in a new direction. It was like watching a small stream change the course of a rushing river. The throw was perfect. Korath went flying through the air, his forearms flailing helplessly. He hit the mat with a sound like thunder, and the entire floor shook. For a moment, he just lay there, stunned and confused. He had expected to be holding a broken human right now. Instead, he was on his back, staring at the ceiling. The room fell completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the other sparring matches stopped as cadets turned to see what had made that loud noise. Instructor Vex's yellow eyes went wide, and his forked tongue flicked out nervously. Zelix's clicking sound stopped completely. Braun's crystal body dimmed as if someone had turned down a light. Both of them stared at the scene, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. How had the small human thrown their powerful friend across the room? But Heian was not finished. As his grandfather had always told him, if you must fight, fight to win. If you must win, win completely. Before Korath could fully recover, Heian was moving again. He approached the fallen Thuvian with quick, smooth steps. His movements were not rushed or angry, they were calm and controlled. Like a craftsman working with familiar tools, Korath tried to roll over and get to his feet, but his head was still spinning from the impact. His stone-hard skin had protected him from serious injury, but it had not protected him from the shock of being thrown. As he pushed himself up with 2 arms, Hyan's foot swept out and knocked those arms away. Down went Korath again, this time landing on his side. He tried to use his other 2 arms to push himself up, but Hyan was ready for this too. A quick strike to the Thuvian's elbow hit a nerve cluster that made the arm go numb. Another strike to his shoulder did the same to the second arm. Impossible, Zelix whispered to Braun. Thuvian nerve clusters are protected by thick muscle and bone. How does the human know where they are? The answer was simple, though the aliens did not know it. Humans had been studying anatomy for thousands of years. They had learned where every species was vulnerable, where pressure points were located, and how to disable opponents much larger than themselves. This knowledge had been passed down through generations of warriors and healers. Korath was strong, but strength meant nothing if you could not use it. Hyan moved around him like a dancer, always staying just out of reach. Every time the Thuvian tried to grab him, Hyan was somewhere else. Every time Korath tried to use his size advantage, Hyan turned it against him. A strike to the back of Korath's knee made the leg buckle. A hit to his wrist made him drop his guard. A push at the right moment sent him stumbling forward. Each move was small by itself, but together they were destroying the alien's ability to fight back. "This is not possible," Korath gasped as he tried once again to get to his feet. "You are just a human. You are weak." "Weak?" Hyan asked quietly. For the first time since the fight began, he spoke. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made several aliens take a step backward. "Let me show you what weak really means." Hyan moved faster now, his strikes coming like raindrops in a storm. Each hit was precise, targeting exactly the right spot to cause maximum effect. To the watching aliens, it looked like the human had suddenly grown extra arms. He seemed to be hitting Korath from all directions at once, but this was not wild fighting or lucky strikes. This was the result of years of training and study. Hyan knew exactly what he was doing. Every move had a purpose, every strike had a target. He was dismantling his opponent piece by piece, like taking apart a machine. Korath's stone-like skin was still hard, but it could not protect him from impacts to his joints and nerve centers. His 4 arms were still strong, but they could not hit what they could not catch. His warrior training was extensive, but it had never taught him how to fight someone who moved like Han. The other alien cadets watched in growing amazement and fear. This was not how fights were supposed to go. The strong were supposed to beat the weak. The big were supposed to defeat the small. But somehow, a tiny human was destroying one of their strongest warriors. How is he doing this? One cadet whispered. To another, "Is this some kind of human trick?" Asked a third. Instructor Vex said nothing, but his mind was racing. He had seen thousands of fights in his years as a teacher, but nothing like this. The human was not just winning, he was making it look easy. Every move Korath made was predicted and countered. Every attack was turned into a disadvantage. Jin and Hana watched with growing smiles on their faces. They had seen Heian fight before, but never against an opponent this much larger. They were proud of their friend, but they were also a little worried. The other aliens were learning something about humans that maybe they were not ready to learn. As Korath struggled on the mat, bleeding from several small cuts and gasping for breath, Heian stood over him. The human was barely breathing hard, and there was not a mark on him except for the bruise from the kick at the beginning of the fight. "Do you surrender?" Heian asked calmly, but Korath was too proud and too confused to give up. His warrior culture did not allow for surrender, especially not to someone so much smaller. "Never!" He roared and tried one last desperate attack. It was exactly what Heian had been waiting for. As the Thuvian lunged upward with all 4 arms, Heian stepped aside and struck once more. This time, his target was a nerve cluster at the base of Korath's neck, a spot that would not cause permanent damage, but would end the fight immediately. Korath's eyes rolled back, and his massive body went limp. He fell to the mat like a tree that had been cut down, unconscious but breathing normally. The training room was so quiet that everyone could hear their own heartbeats. Hyan stood alone in the center of the mat, completely calm, completely in control. Around him, dozens of alien cadets stared in shock and disbelief. In less than 2 minutes, everything they thought they knew about humans had been proven wrong. The silence in the training room was so complete that the sound of Korath's unconscious breathing seemed loud. Hyan stood over the fallen Thuvian, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. But something had changed about him during the fight, something that made the alien cadets feel uncomfortable. His dark eyes seemed different now, sharper, more focused, like a predator watching its prey. The calm, quiet human who had walked into class that morning was still there, but now there was something else showing through. Something that made the aliens remember old fears buried deep in their genetic memory. Instructor Vex was the first to move. He walked slowly toward the center of the mat, his claws clicking on the floor. His yellow reptilian eyes studied Hyan carefully, as if seeing him for the first time. The instructor had been teaching combat for 20 years, and he thought he understood all the different fighting styles in the galaxy. He had been wrong. "Cadet Hyan," Vex said quietly. "Step away from your opponent." Hyan turned his head to look at the instructor, and Vex actually took a step backward. There was something in the human's eyes that the Draknari had never seen before in a student. It was not anger or madness, it was something much more dangerous. It was the complete absence of fear. "He is only unconscious," Hyan said in a calm voice. "He will wake up in a few minutes with nothing worse than a headache." As if to prove his point, Korath groaned softly and his eyes began to flutter open. The massive Thuvian looked around in confusion, trying to remember where he was and what had happened. When he saw Hyan standing over him, the memories came flooding back. "Impossible," Korath whispered. "This cannot be real." Hyan reached down and offered his hand to help Korath get up. The gesture surprised everyone, including the Thuvian. After being defeated so completely, most warriors would expect mockery or contempt from their victor. Instead, the human was showing kindness. Korath stared at the offered hand for a long moment. His pride told him to refuse help, especially from someone he had tried to humiliate. But something in Hyan's eyes made him reach up and accept the assistance. The human pulled him to his feet with surprising strength. "Thank you," Korath said. Quietly. It was the first time he had ever thanked a human for anything. Around the room, the other alien cadets were still trying to process what they had witnessed. Zelix's compound eyes were moving rapidly as he watched every small movement Hyan made. Braun's crystal body was glowing dimly, a sign that he was deep in thought. "How did you do that?" Braun asked suddenly. His crystal voice had lost its usual confidence. "Korath is one of the strongest fighters in the Academy. His people have been warriors for thousands of years." Hyan looked at the crystal being with those same sharp eyes. "Strength is not everything," he said simply. "My grandfather taught me that a smart fighter does not try to be stronger than his enemy. He finds ways to make his enemy's strength work against him." "But you are so small," Zelix clicked nervously. "Your bones should have broken when you grappled with him. Your muscles should not be able to move his weight." "Size is not everything either," Hyan replied. "My planet taught me that the biggest predators are not always the most dangerous ones." This made several aliens exchange worried glances. They were beginning to realize that they had seriously misunderstood what humans were capable of. The Academy. Files had described Earth as a peaceful world with weak life forms. But if that was true, how had this small human defeated their strongest warrior so easily? Jin and Hana moved closer to their friend, pride showing clearly on their faces. They had known that Hyan was skilled, but even they had been impressed by what they had just seen. Other humans in the galaxy would hear about this fight, and they would finally have proof that their species belonged among the stars. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" asked a voice from the crowd. It was Bo, a cetacean whose whale-like species was known for their intelligence rather than their fighting ability. Unlike many of the other aliens, he sounded curious rather Then frightened, from my grandfather, Hyon answered, and from my world. On Earth, everything is trying to kill everything else. Plants, animals, weather, disease, even the ground sometimes shakes and tries to swallow you. Humans learn to survive by being smarter and tougher than anything else. Your planet sounds horrible, Braun said, his crystal body shuddering. Why would anyone want to live there? Because it made us what we are, Hannah spoke up for the first time. Her voice was clear and proud. Every challenge made us stronger. Every danger taught us something new. By the time we learned to travel to other worlds, we had already survived the hardest test in the galaxy, staying alive on Earth. Instructor Vex was listening to this conversation with growing understanding. The Academy's information about humans was clearly incomplete. They had focused on human technology and social structures, but they had not studied human evolution or survival instincts. This was a serious oversight that would need to be corrected. Cadet Hyon, the instructor said, report to my office after class. We need to discuss your training background. Yes, sir, Hyon replied. His breathing had returned to normal, and the dangerous look in his eyes was fading. He was becoming the quiet, polite cadet again. But now everyone knew that the other side was still there, waiting beneath the surface. Korath was standing steady. On his feet now, though he still looked confused. His forearms hung at his sides, and his stone-like skin was returning to its normal gray color. He stared at Hyon with a mixture of respect and bewilderment. I do not understand, the Thuvian said slowly. I have trained my whole life to be a warrior. I have defeated enemies twice my size. How did you make me look like a beginner? Because you were fighting the way you were taught to fight, Hyon explained patiently. You use the techniques that work against other Thuvians. But I am not a Thuvian. I fight differently. But surely your people have fighting styles too. Why are they so different from ours? Hyon thought about this question for a moment. How could he explain thousands of years of human martial arts to an alien who had only learned one way to fight? My people learned to fight everything, he said finally. Not just other humans, but animals much larger and stronger than us. We learned to fight in forests and deserts and mountains and swamps. We learned to fight with weapons and without weapons, during the day and at night, when we were healthy and when we were injured. He paused and looked around the room at all the watching faces. Most species in the galaxy evolved to be very good at one thing. Humans evolved to be good enough at everything to survive. The room was quiet again as the aliens absorbed this information. They were beginning to understand that humans were not weak, they were different. And that difference made them much more dangerous than anyone had realized. Young Tae, another human cadet who had been watching from the back of the room, stepped forward. Should we tell them about the martial arts tournaments back home? He asked Jin quietly. Not yet, Jin whispered back. Let them get used to this first. If the aliens thought that Hyon's skills were impressive, they would be terrified to learn that he was not even considered one of the best fighters on Earth. There were humans who could move faster, hit harder, and fight longer than anything the galaxy had ever seen, but that was a lesson for another day. As the other cadets began to whisper among themselves, Hyon walked to the center of the mat where Korath still stood. The massive Thuvian was rubbing his neck where the final strike had knocked him unconscious. His forearms moved slowly, testing, to make sure everything still worked properly. Are you injured? Hyon asked with genuine concern in his voice. Korath looked down at the small human who had just defeated him so completely. My body is fine, he said slowly. But my pride may never recover. Pride can be rebuilt, Hyon replied. Bones take longer to heal. This simple statement made Korath think. A human could have seriously hurt him during the fight. Those precise strikes could have broken joints or caused permanent damage. But Hyon had chosen to use just enough force to win. Nothing more. This was not the behavior of a savage or a cruel warrior. Around them, the other alien cadets were still staring in amazement. Zelix's 6 legs were clicking nervously on the floor as he tried to process what he had witnessed. I still do not understand, he said to Braun. How did someone so small move so fast? It was not just speed, Braun replied, his crystal body dim with thought. It was like he knew what Korath was going to do before Korath knew it himself. They were right, though they did not fully understand why. Hain had been reading his opponent from the moment the fight began. Every movement, every shift in weight, every change in breathing told him something about what Korath was planning to do next. This was a skill that humans had developed over millions of years of hunting and being hunted. Instructor Vex stepped forward, his yellow eyes studying both fighters. "The match is over," he announced to the room. "Resume your own training exercises." But most of the cadets were too distracted to focus on their own sparring. They kept glancing over at Hyan, trying to figure out if all humans were capable of fighting like this, or if he was somehow special. "Cadet Korath," Vex continued, "do you have anything to say about this match?" The Thuvian was quiet for a long moment. His warrior culture demanded that he be strong, that he never show weakness or admit defeat. But something about this situation was different. He had not just lost a fight. He had learned something important. "I underestimated my opponent," Korath said finally. "I thought that because he was smaller and from a species I did not know, he would be easy to defeat. I was wrong. And what did this teach you?" the instructor asked. "That there are different kinds of strength," Korath replied, "and that I still have much to learn." Hyan nodded respectfully to the Thuvian. "You fought with honor," he said. "Your techniques are strong and your spirit is brave. In a different situation, the result might have been different." But everyone in the room knew this was not true. Han had been in complete control of the fight from beginning to end. He had made it look easy not because Korath was weak, but because the human style of fighting was so different from anything the aliens had ever seen. "How many humans can fight like this?" Bio asked suddenly. The intelligent cetacean had been thinking about the larger implications of what he had witnessed. Jin and Hannah exchanged glances. This was a dangerous question. If the aliens knew the truth about human military capabilities, it might cause panic or even war. But lying would be worse if the truth was discovered later. "All humans learn some fighting techniques," Hannah said carefully. "It is part of our basic education, like mathematics or language." "All of them?" Zelix clicked in disbelief. "Even the ones who are not soldiers?" "Especially the ones who are not soldiers," Jin replied. "On our world, danger can come from anywhere at any time. A farmer might need to fight off wild animals. A teacher might need to protect children from natural disasters. Everyone learns to defend themselves." This information sent a chill through the alien cadets. They were beginning to realize that humans were not just a peaceful species that had gotten lucky with technology. They were survivors from a world so dangerous that even their civilians were trained warriors. "What about weapons?" Braun asked nervously. "Do all humans know how to use weapons too?" "We prefer not to fight at all," Hyan said diplomatically. "But yes, most humans know how to use various tools for protection." What he did not mention was that humans had invented more ways to hurt each other than any other species in the galaxy. Earth's history was filled with thousands of different weapons, from simple clubs to complex machines of war. Human creativity had always been at its peak when it came to matters of survival and conflict. Instructor Vex was taking mental notes of everything he heard. After class, he would need to contact the Academy's Intelligence Division and recommend a complete review of their files on human capabilities. If one human cadet could defeat their strongest student so easily, what could a trained human soldier do? "I want to learn," Korath said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the massive Thuvian. "Human Hyan, would you teach me to fight the way you fight?" This request surprised everyone, including Hyan. It was unusual for a warrior from a proud species like the Thuvians to ask for training from someone they had previously considered inferior. "I would be honored to share what I know," Hyan replied. "But you should understand that human fighting techniques are designed for human bodies. Some things that work for me might not work for you." "Then teach me the principles," Korath said eagerly. "Teach me how to think like a human fighter." And me too, Bill added quickly. I am not strong like Korath, but perhaps I can learn to be smarter in combat. Soon, several other alien cadets were expressing interest in learning human fighting techniques. Even some who had been making jokes about human weakness a few minutes earlier were now curious about what other surprises the humans might have. Instructor Vex watched this development with mixed feelings. On one hand, it was good for the cadets to learn from each other and expand their knowledge. On the other hand, he was beginning to worry about what the Academy administration would think when they learned that alien cadets were asking humans for combat training. We will discuss this later, Vex announced. For now, return to your assigned exercises. The lesson here is that every species has something to offer, and we should not judge others based on assumptions. As the class began to return to their normal activities, Hyan found himself surrounded by curious aliens asking questions about human fighting techniques, Earth's dangers, and whether all humans were as skilled as he was. He answered their questions politely, but he was careful not to reveal too much. These aliens seemed friendly now, but he remembered how they had acted before the fight. Respect that came only after a demonstration of power was not the same as true friendship. Jin and Hana stayed close to their friend, proud of what he had accomplished, but also worried about the attention he was receiving. Being the center of attention could be dangerous for humans at the Academy. Some aliens might see Hyan's victory as a threat rather than an impressive display of skill. As the class period came to an end, Hyan gathered his belongings and prepared to report to Instructor Vex's office as ordered. But before he left, Korath approached him one more time. Thank you, the Thuvian said quietly. You could have humiliated me completely, but you chose to show mercy. That is the mark of a true warrior. We are all here to learn, Hyan replied. Today I learned that Thuvian warriors are honorable even in defeat. That is worth more than any victory. As Hyan walked toward the door, he could feel dozens of alien eyes watching his every move. The quiet human cadet who had entered the classroom that morning was leaving as something else entirely, a representative of a species that was much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The lesson was over, but the real education was just beginning. News of the fight spread through the Academy faster than light through hyperspace. By the time Hyan reached Instructor Vex's office, cadets from other classes were already talking about the human who had defeated Korath in less than 2 minutes. Some of the stories were accurate, others were wildly exaggerated, but all of them had one thing in common. They made the aliens look at humans in a completely new way. In the cafeteria, Cadet Lee, another human student, found himself surrounded by alien classmates who had never spoken to him before. They asked him dozens of questions about Earth, about human fighting techniques, and about whether he could fight like Hyan. I heard that the human threw Korath across the room like he was a child, said a green-skinned vegan whose species was known for their incredible eyesight. My friend was there, added a furry Ursoid. He said the human moved so fast that he looked like a blur. Lee smiled nervously. Hyan is very skilled, he said carefully. But so are many humans. We all learn to defend ourselves on Earth. This simple statement caused worried murmurs among the aliens. If all humans could fight like Hyan, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? How many other surprises were the humans hiding? In another part of the Academy, the administration was holding an emergency meeting. Din Zerath, a tall being whose species looked like walking trees, was reviewing the combat footage with several other high-ranking officials. Play it again, he said in his creaking voice. I need to see exactly how the human managed to defeat our strongest cadet. A holographic display showed the fight from multiple angles. They watched as Hyan stepped into Korath's charge, used the Thuvian's momentum against him, and then systematically dismantled his defenses with precise strikes. Remarkable, whispered Professor Yulan, whose octopus-like species was known for their intelligence. The human's technique is completely different from any fighting style in our databases. Where did he learn this? That is what we need to find. Out, Din Zarath replied. Contact the human embassy immediately. We need detailed information about their military training, their combat capabilities, and their true potential as warriors. Meanwhile, in Instructor Vex's office, Hyan sat quietly while the reptilian teacher studied his academy file on a holographic display. The file was surprisingly thin for someone who had just demonstrated such impressive fighting skills. Your records show basic physical fitness scores and standard academic performance, Vex said slowly. There is no mention of advanced combat training or special military experience. I did not think it was relevant to my studies here, Hyan replied. Honestly, the application asked about academic qualifications and technical skills. It did not ask about martial arts training. Tell me about this training, Vex said, leaning forward with interest. Where did you learn to fight like that? Hyan thought. About how to explain thousands of years of human martial arts to an alien who had probably never heard of concepts like kung fu, karate, or judo. My grandfather taught me when I was young, he began. He learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather, going back many generations. On Earth, we call these teachings martial arts. Martial arts? Vex repeated, making notes. Are these military techniques? Some of them were developed by soldiers, Hyan explained. But many were created by farmers, monks, and ordinary people who needed to protect themselves. Over time, different regions developed different styles, based on their local dangers and cultural beliefs. How many of these styles exist? The instructor asked. Hundreds, Hyan said simply. Maybe thousands. Each one is designed for different situations and different types of opponents. Vex's yellow eyes widened. He had been thinking that Hyan's skills were unique or perhaps shared by a small group of elite human warriors. The idea that there were thousands of different fighting styles on Earth was both fascinating and terrifying. And all humans learn these techniques? Most learn at least basic self-defense, Hyan confirmed. Some study more advanced techniques as a hobby or for physical fitness. A few, like me, study seriously for many years. What would you consider? Yourself? Beginner, intermediate, or advanced? Hyan was quiet for a moment. On Earth, he was considered skilled but not exceptional. There were masters of martial arts who could do things that seemed impossible, even by human standards. But he did not think the instructor was ready to hear about those capabilities yet. Intermediate, he said finally. There are many humans who are much more skilled than I am. This answer made Vex's scales change color slightly, a sign of stress. Among his species, if Hyan was only intermediate and he had defeated Korath so easily, what could an advanced human warrior do? While this conversation was taking place, word of the fight was spreading beyond the academy. Communication networks carried the story to other planets, other species, and other military installations. The video footage was analyzed by intelligence agencies across the galaxy. On the Thuvian homeworld, military leaders watched the recording in stunned silence. Korath came from a family of famous warriors. He had been expected to become one of their greatest champions. The fact that he had been defeated by a small human raised serious questions about Thuvian superiority in combat. How is this possible? Asked General Thok, a massive Thuvian with scars from dozens of battles. Our warriors are the finest in the galaxy. Our techniques have been proven in countless wars. Perhaps, said his aide carefully, we have been too focused on fighting other Thuvians. This human used techniques we have never encountered before. Then we must learn these techniques. The general growled. Send observers to the academy? I want to know everything about human combat methods. Similar conversations were taking place on worlds throughout the galaxy. The Chitaurans were analyzing Hyan's speed and reflexes. The Kavari were studying his use of leverage and momentum. The Draknari were trying to understand how he had identified Korath's weak points so quickly back at the academy. The human cadets were experiencing a strange new sensation, respect from their alien classmates. For the first time since arriving, they were not treated as weak newcomers who did not belong. Instead, they were viewed as potentially dangerous individuals who should be approached with caution. Young Park found that his study group suddenly wanted to know his opinions on tactical problems. Cadet Wu discovered that his lab partners were eager to hear about human problem-solving techniques. Even the academy staff began treating the human students differently, asking their input on training exercises and strategic scenarios, but with this new respect came new dangers. Some alien cadets who had been merely dismissive before were now openly hostile. They saw the humans as a threat to the established order, a challenge to their own species' dominance. "The humans are hiding their true nature," whispered Cadet Zek, a snake-like serpentian whose species was known for their paranoia. "They came here pretending to be weak so they could study our defenses. This is all part of some larger plan." These conspiracy theories began to spread through certain groups of cadets. They pointed to humanity's rapid technological advancement and their quick integration into galactic society as evidence of hidden agendas. The fact that humans had been underestimated made some aliens wonder what else they might be hiding. As evening fell over the academy, Hyan finally finished his meeting with Instructor Vex and returned to his dormitory room. He shared the space with Jin and another human cadet named Sue, who had heard about the fight from a dozen different sources. "Is it true that you knocked out Korath with one hit?" Sue asked excitedly. "The stories are getting bigger each time someone tells them," Hyan replied with a tired smile. "By tomorrow they will probably say I defeated 10 aliens at once while blindfolded." "But you did beat him," Jin said seriously. "And now everyone knows that humans are not as weak as they thought." "That could be good for us, or it could be very bad." "What do you mean?" Sue asked. "Think about it," Jin explained. "If the aliens thought we were harmless, they might have been willing to accept us as junior partners in the galaxy. But if they see us as a potential threat—" He did not need to finish the sentence. All three humans understood the implications. Throughout galactic history, species that were seen as threats were often eliminated before they could become too powerful. As they prepared for sleep, Hyan looked out the window at the stars above the academy. Somewhere out there on hundreds of different worlds, aliens were discussing what they had learned about humans today. Some would be curious, some would be fearful, and some would be angry. The fight with Korath had lasted only 2 minutes, but its effects would be felt across the galaxy for years to come. Humanity had just announced to the universe that they were not the weak, harmless species that everyone had assumed. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for that truth. 6 months had passed since the fight that changed everything. The Galactic Military Academy looked the same from the outside, but inside, a revolution was taking place. The old assumptions about species strength and combat capability had been thrown out, replaced by a new understanding of what it meant to be a warrior. Hyan walked through the academy halls with quiet confidence. He no longer had to endure whispered insults or deliberate collisions in the corridors. Instead, cadets from dozens of species nodded respectfully as he passed. Some even bowed slightly, a gesture of honor that had once been reserved only for the strongest warriors. The biggest change was in the training rooms. What had once been separate classes for different species were now integrated sessions where everyone learned from everyone else. Human cadets taught flexibility and adaptability. Thuvian cadets shared techniques for building strength and endurance. Chitaran cadets demonstrated speed and coordination. The academy had discovered that diversity made everyone stronger. "Remember, the goal is not to overpower your opponent," Han explained to a mixed group of alien cadets. He had been officially appointed as an assistant combat instructor, the first human to hold such a position at the academy. "The goal is to end the conflict as quickly and safely as possible." His students today included Korath, who had become one of his most dedicated pupils. The massive Thuvian had swallowed his pride and asked to learn human fighting techniques. Over the months, he had developed a hybrid style that combined his natural strength with human principles of leverage and timing. "But what if the opponent is much larger than you?" asked Cadet Yuki, a small blue-skinned humanoid whose species was known for their intelligence rather than their physical abilities. "Size can be an advantage or a disadvantage," Hyan replied. "It depends on how you use it. Watch." He gestured for Korath to attack him. The Thuvian charged forward with controlled aggression, his 4 arms moving in a pattern they had practiced many times. But instead of the wild rush from their first fight, This was precise and calculated. Hyun moved to meet the attack, but this time Korath was ready for the counter. The alien warrior adjusted his stance and grip, making it much harder for the human to use his momentum against him. For a moment, the two fighters were locked together, testing each other's strength and balance. Then Hyun smiled and shifted his weight slightly. Korath, anticipating a throw, moved to counter it, but the throw never came. Instead, Hyun used the alien's expectation against him, sliding out of the grapple and striking a pressure point that made Korath's right arms go numb temporarily. "Well done," Hyun said as he helped his sparring partner recover. "You lasted much longer than last time. Your defense has improved greatly." "I am learning," Korath replied with satisfaction, "but I think I will never be able to predict all your moves." "That is the point," Hyun explained to the watching cadets. "Humans learned to be unpredictable because our survival depended on it. Every predator on our world was stronger or faster than us, so we had to be smarter and more adaptable." The lesson continued for another hour, with cadets practicing techniques from multiple species and learning to adapt their fighting styles to different opponents. When it was over, several aliens lingered to ask questions about human training, methods, and Earth's dangerous wildlife. As Hyun gathered his teaching materials, Instructor Vex approached him. The reptilian teacher's attitude toward humans had changed dramatically over the past months. Where once he had seen them as weak newcomers, he now recognized them as valuable assets to the Academy. "The Academy Board wants to see you," Vex said quietly. "They have a proposal to discuss." An hour later, Hyun sat in the Academy's main conference room facing a panel of high-ranking officials from different species. Yinzareth's tree-like form dominated one end of the table, while Professor Yalan's tentacles moved nervously as she organized her notes. "Cadet Hyun," the dean began in his creaking voice, "your performance over the past months has been exemplary. Your teaching methods have improved combat effectiveness across all species by an average of 30%. "Thank you, sir," Hyun replied politely. "We have a proposal for you," continued Professor Yalan. "The Galactic Defense Force has requested that the Academy develop a new training program based on human combat principles. They want you to design and lead this program." Hyun was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. This was a huge honor, but it also meant taking on enormous responsibility. What exactly would this program involve? Teaching selected cadets from all member species how to think and fight like humans, explained Admiral Korv, a crystalline being who represented the military command. The goal would be to create a new generation of warriors who are more adaptable and unpredictable than our current forces. "We have analyzed combat data from across the galaxy," added General Mox, whose insectoid species had once been humanity's harshest critics. "Traditional fighting styles are becoming predictable. Our enemies know how Thuvians fight, how Chitaurans move, how Dreknari think. But no one understands human combat methods yet. This could give us a significant advantage in future conflicts," Admiral Korv continued. "But we need human guidance to implement it properly." Hyun thought about his friends back on Earth, about the martial arts masters who had taught him, about the long tradition of warriors who had passed down their knowledge through generations. They had never imagined that their techniques would one day be taught to aliens on distant worlds. "I would be honored to help," he said finally. "But I must make something clear. Human fighting techniques are not just about physical movements. They are about philosophy, about understanding yourself and your opponent, about finding peaceful solutions when possible." "We understand," Dean Zareth assured him. "That is exactly what we want to teach." As the meeting concluded and Hyun walked back to his dormitory, he passed the training rooms where evening classes were in session. Through the windows, he could see mixed groups of cadets working together, sharing techniques and learning from each other's strengths. In one room, Jin was teaching a group of aliens about human strategic thinking. In another, Hannah was demonstrating how to adapt technology for different species' needs. Throughout the Academy, humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers but as valuable teachers and allies. The dormitory common area was buzzing with conversation when Hyan arrived. Several new human cadets had arrived that week, Young, Lee, and Park among them. They looked nervous and uncertain, much like Hyan had when he first arrived. "Is it true what they say about humans here?" Young asked quietly. "That we are respected." "Now, respect has to be earned," Hyan replied gently. "But yes, things have changed. The aliens no longer assume we are weak or useless." "What changed their minds?" Lee wanted to know. Jin and Hannah exchanged smiles. "Someone showed them that humans should not be underestimated," Hannah said. "But remember," Hyan added seriously, "with respect comes responsibility. We represent all of humanity here. How we act reflects on our entire species." As the evening wore on and the new cadets learned about the Academy's transformation, Hyan stood at the window looking out at the stars. 6 months ago, humans had been an unknown quantity in the galaxy, a new species that might contribute something. Useful if they were lucky. Now, military leaders across hundreds of worlds were studying human combat techniques. Training programs were being redesigned based on human principles. The galaxy was learning that strength came in many forms, and that the most dangerous opponents were often the ones who looked harmless. The change had started with a simple fight in a training room when an alien bully had kicked a human cadet and learned that actions had consequences. But it had grown into something much larger, a new understanding that survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest, but about being able to adapt and overcome any challenge. As he prepared for sleep, Hyan thought about a saying his grandfather had often repeated: "The bamboo that bends in the storm survives while the mighty oak is uprooted." The galaxy was learning that humans were like bamboo, flexible, resilient, and far stronger than they appeared. The Academy was quiet now, but across the galaxy the ripples from that 2-minute fight were still spreading. On military bases and training facilities throughout known space, instructors were teaching new recruits that assumptions could be deadly, that every opponent deserved respect, and that the most important weapon was not strength or speed, but the ability to think and adapt. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by being the strongest species, but by showing that intelligence, adaptability, and determination were forces that could not be conquered. The age of human warriors had begun, not with conquest or domination, but with the simple act of standing up to a bully and proving that size was not everything. The lesson had been learned, and the galaxy would never be the same.